Hello, everyone. My name is Rongbin Luo. I'm here for introducing the quantitative research data analyst. I was hired by King Schools, and now we are presenting the King School data analysis. Before that, I would like to say that statistics plays a crucial role in shaping our understanding of education. As educators, we are not only focused on students' learning outcomes, but also on various factors that impact student success. One such critical factor is absenteeism rates, which can have significant implications for students' performance and overall educational outcomes. By analyzing absenteeism data using statistical tools such as SPSS, we can gain valuable insights that inform our decision-making and help us identify patterns, trends, and potential interventions. In this presentation, we will explore the meaningful significance of statistics in education, with a particular focus on how the analysis of absenteeism rates using SPSS can provide valuable insights for the school board and inform evidence-based strategy for promoting student success. Now we come to the page of contents. The first part will be the overall description. The second part will be answering the research question 1. The third part will be answering the research question 2. And the fourth part will be answering the research question 3. And the final part will be the recommendation. For the overall description, the sample size of the King School was 388 students. The population was evenly distributed in terms of gender, with 51.3% boys and 48.7% girls. The proportion of different grades were roughly equal, which represents about 10% of the population for each grade. The biggest group was JK, which representing 12.6%, and the smallest group was the grade 4, which represents 7.7% of the population. 64.2% of the students claim that they have attended in 2 schools. And it's a very interesting phenomenon that the more school student attended, the more affected by their absentee rates. There are slightly more than 1/3 of students, which means 33.5% were single child in their families. Is there any effects in families with the siblings or non-siblings for their child with their absentee rates? This is a very interesting question to analyze. The median neighborhood income levels lower than 30,000 Canadian dollar, and those higher than 120,000 Canadian dollar have the same percentage, which means 0.78%. This means there are 3 students in total with their family income lower than 30,000 Canadian dollar, and there are another 3 students with their family income more than 120,000 Canadian dollar. There are 3 students didn't want to disclose their family income in the testing, which considered as the missing data. Most of the students have individual education plans. The percentage is 80.9% versus 19.1%. It was a non-French immersion school. The proportion of the student busted and non-busted was similar, which representing 58.8% with the student busted and 41.2% of the student non-busted. There was slightly less than a quarter of the students self-identified as First Nation, Métis, or Inuit, which means 24.2% of the population. Now we are answering the research question 1. How much student absenteeism is there at school? With the help of the SPSS, we can analyze all the questionnaires answered by the students, and analyze their answers with different methods. And with the table 2, we can see all the data analyzed with the different characteristics of the students about their absenteeism rates by student characteristics. There are many information in this table, but mainly we can focus our attention, we can pay our attention on column 2 and column 3. The column 2 means the number with the valid data. That means with distributed by different characteristic. It answers how many students in each kind of the gender or each grade. So this tells us all the percentage of the their categories. And we can find the absent rates by focusing on these two columns. In the third column, which representing the mean, it shows that the average percentage of each category. And the 3 students who did not disclose their answer, as we mentioned above, is treated as missing data. So the missing data for these 3 students, so it represents 1.5% of the data. It was applied to all variables. So that means all the numbers is excluded by these missing data. And then with the analysis of the table 2, we have several interesting graphs that are remarkable for us. First of all, the students who had attended 4 schools or more showed higher absence rates than others. That means the more school the student changed, the higher absence rates they will have. This is very important phenomenon that we are considering what kind of recommendation to suggest to school to solve this issue. The second point is families with higher income, which means more than 120,000 Canadian dollars, had higher absence rates, which represents 23% of the population. Oppositely, those with income level between 90,000 Canadian dollar to 999 Canadian dollar have significantly lower rates than others, which represents the 6.9% of the population. Comparing the absence rates between First Nation, Métis, and Inuit and non-FNNI students, the former had nearly double than the latter, which represents the 19.92% of the FNNI students and versus 10.08% of the non-FNNI students. To answer the research question 2, what impacts does students' absenteeism have on student achievement in literacy and math scores? We have done the questionnaires about the reading, writing, and math levels for the students. So related to the absence rates, we can see if there was any co-relationships between these different variables. So we can see that in this analysis, we take 2 grades as an example to analyze. So we chose the students in grade 3 and students in grade 6 to analyze the results. So we can see that in grade 3 students, the 3 graphs are about at the bottom of the slides. You can see it's showing that the difference correlationships between the absence rates and EQL reading levels, writing levels, and math levels for grade 3 students of King's School. We can see that each of the graphs shows the line that shows the correlationship with the 2 different variables. So we can see that the correlationship between between the different variables are slightly negative. So with that, we can see that the y-axis represents the absence rates. The x-axis represents the EQL levels. Then the first graph shows that the EQL reading levels and the absenteeism levels, they are correlationships. So we can see that there is a line negatively related. And for it will be the same for the second and the third grade, for the second and the third graphs. So it tells that the thick line shows a negative correlationship between EQOL levels and absenteeism rates, which means the higher the absence rate was, the lower score they will obtain, which will be normal. The correlationship between writing levels and absence rates was not that significant as the other EQAO levels. But there is another interesting phenomenon that we can focus that on each of the graphs, each point represents the different students having their scores in their EQAO level testing. So as we imagine, the higher absence rates the student have, the lower score they should obtain in this test. But we can see that on the y-axis, the higher absence rates the student have, but we can't see so many points in lower scores. But they all always focus on the middle. So there is another interesting phenomenon we can tell that is that the absence rates of the students is really related with the EQL reading, writing, and math levels of the students. So this is a very interesting phenomenon that we should analyze. So this is the result for the grade 3 students. And we are having the similar results for the grade 6 students. The thick lines that we can see in each of the every graph here showed a negative correlationships between EQA levels and absentee rates, which means the higher the absence rate was, the lower score they obtained. And the relationships between reading levels and absence rates is sharper than the others. The correlationships between writing levels and absence rates was not as significant as other EQO levels. Now we are answering the research question 3. To reveal the differences in students with or without individual educational plans. That means, is there any important effects regarding the student having or doesn't have any individual education plans? So to answer these questions, an independent sample t-test was periodized to answer the research question. And the difference was not significant for grade 3. With the sample size of 43, the t-scores was minus 0.459, and the p score was 0.649. And the result for the grade 6 students was also not significant. With the sample size of 36 students, the t-score was negative minus 0.29, and the p-score was 0.773. So with the t-test of the two grade students, the answer is not significant. The difference between the absence rates with and without individual educational plan was not that significant. Now we come to the last part, is the recommendations. First of all, due to the more schools that students have attended, the higher absence rates they have, school may involve implementing policies and procedures to help support students as they transition on new schools, providing additional resources to address any academic or social-emotional challenge they may be facing. Second, to tackle the issue that FMNI students have higher absence rates than others, it is essential to engage with the First Nation community to understand their unique cultural values, traditions, and educational needs. Based on their needs and experience, schools should develop initiatives to address poverty, access to health care, transportation, or mental health support that address the root cause of the absenteeism. And the final, but not the last, as students in higher grades had higher absence rates, it might be caused by disengagement with the curriculum, a lack of interest or motivation, or external factors. Schools should focus on mentoring programs, academic supports, mental health services, or family engagement programs to support students in their attendance. Before finish, I would like to thank my colleague and professor in this course to help me. I would like to take this opportunity to thank who had helped me in finishing this task, including but not limited to Frashel, Monica, Samantha, Zhengjie. They have figured out errors on my statistic and calculation and point out the blind spots for that I could understand better in the missions. And during the group discussion, we've had a productive discussion through Zoom meeting. Sam had pointed out lots of problems on my tables, and I've realized how careless and superficial I was. Thanks to our facilitator, Dr. Christina Van Barneveld, with her profound knowledge in quantitative research, careful and detailed guidance, I've filled in the gaps in statistics. I'm sure that it will surely help me in the future researches. So that was my presentation. Thank you very much.